I'm Kiyoka Ueda from Kobe Municipal Fukuya High School. Today, I'll talk about what can be done to increase accessibility to education in Japan by promoting an inclusive education. This research is related to SDGs Goal 4, quality education, and 10, reduce inequalities. This is the structure of today's presentation. Let me begin by giving some background information. The definition of accessibility is as shown on the slide. This research especially focuses on accessibility to education. So, why is accessibility important? It's because schools are regularly responsible to do reasonable accommodation for people with disabilities, which make people with disabilities live more easy by providing facilities or supports. This is regulated under the Act for Eliminating Discrimination Against the Persons with Disabilities. However, students with developmental disorders have low accessibility to education. Definition of developmental disorder is as follows. This has 5 types of disabilities, such as autism spectrum disorder, ASD, attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, ADHD, and so on. Also, from now on, I call students with developmental disorders students with DD. Now, let's take a closer look at the developmental disorders. According to MEX, 8.8% of students are thought to have developmental disorders. While this seems too small, it's still really important to provide education for all, including students with DD, as mentioned in SDGs Goal 4, quality education for all. Poor awareness from others causes students with DD to have low accessibility to education. From a survey conducted by the Challenge Life in 2021, the pie chart on the left shows that 78.6% of non-disabled people think that they understand what a developmental disorder is. On the other hand, the right one shows that only 9.6% of people with DD think that they are understood by non-disabled people, and more than half of them don't think so. In other words, there is a huge gap between the non-disabled and people with DD in terms of awareness. But why does that matter? If students with DD can't get enough awareness from others, they easily tend to have mental problems, and eventually their accessibility to education will become lower. A huge problem, right? So we must address this issue as soon as possible. Moreover, to reduce the gap, it is important to foster positive mindsets for the non-disabled students. Also, compulsory education is a critical field because there are lots of students who have various features and backgrounds. For the above reasons, my research question is, what can be done to foster positive mindset of students in compulsory education to achieve accessibility to education in Japan? To answer the question, I used these methods. So now let's move on to the data and analysis. First, I'll explain about the current situation. Currently, inclusive education has been proceeding around the world to grow students' positive attitude toward people with disabilities. This definition is as follows. However, as this table shown, in Japan, non-disabled students and students with disabilities spend together only in the morning meeting, homerooms, school lunch, and cleaning time, and they don't spend time together in most of classes. In addition, Noguchi and Shimoda identified the points of inclusive education. It should have the continuity of learning contents, be comparable for students, and be reflective. So, is there any successful examples of inclusive education? Ozora Elementary School is well known for inclusive education. As this left diagram shows, this school has a supporting system that families, schools, local communities, and other student supporters are incorporated. As such, there are some unique subjects called Furei. For example, students can hold concerts thrice a year and have open lectures, which is given by local people. Finally, let me explain the inclusive education in Denmark. Denmark's situation is similar to Japan. Both Denmark and Japan have a special needs school or classes, and inclusive education in regular classes. However, Denmark has professionals called pedagogues who have the skills to discern individually and provide individual care to everyone. This is what sets Denmark's inclusive education aside from Japan's. Moreover, Egmont Højskolen is also a famous college for inclusive education in Denmark. There is also a special subject. Students can experience many things which is connected to fun, like bouldering, hiking, swimming, etc. These don't focus on disabilities, so non-disabled people and people with disabilities stand on an equal footing. Based on the data and analysis, it can be said that current inclusive education is not enough to help students to foster positive mindsets, and there are two important elements. First, both students with DD and non-disabled students can have fun in interactions. Second, inclusive education should be supported by local communities. Spotting on the fun is a new kind of inclusive education in Japan, because current inclusive education is still one which non-disabled students willing to understand the students with DD. It is not meaningful. That's why inclusive education should have merits that non-disabled students can feel fun. Then inclusive education will be promoted, and finally accessibility to education will increase. After conducting this research, I proposed suggestions to both schools in compulsory education. First, for elementary schools, making a project called the Exciting Cleaning Project. As you can see in this diagram, this project begins by discussion, then cleaning in small groups including students with DD, and finally they can do class events. In this project, non-disabled students can improve positive recognition and understanding to other students with DD. So now let's see the details of this project. In the discussion part, non-disabled students discuss the role of cleaning and talk about students with DD before conducting an exciting cleaning project. In the cleaning time, there are mainly three characteristics. First, the way of cleaning is playful. For example, students compete cleaning the floor with a wet rag. Second, playing favorite music of students with DD. And finally, students collect the stickers for class event. These plays play a role of reflecting this project. In the class event, students can play a lot of activities. For example, dodgeball, soccer, long rope jumping, and so on. Now, for the junior high school students, I suggest making a new subject called Open Self-Lecture. In this subject, both non-disabled students and students with DD give lectures as small groups, as small teachers. Through this subject, every student expresses themselves and they can know each other. Let's take a closer look at the subject. In the first grade, the teacher takes the lead in conducting the lesson, and the teacher helps students grow positive attitude by recognizing all students as human beings. And in the second grade, some students who can lead everyone else in the student council give self-lectures in small groups. This not only brings students closer to each other, but also improves students' self-esteem and leadership. So it is expected that students with DD relieve mental problems. In the third grade, not only non-disabled students, but also students with DD will have open self-lecture. In this time, students give lectures, and by including local people in the audience, it can raise awareness of developmental disorders in the community. Finally, let me summarize this research and its long-term goal. In this research, I provided exciting cleaning projects and open self-lecture as effective inclusive education. Then, I want to ask you one thing. What is the most important thing to foster positive mindset of people? mindset to increase accessibility to education. That is, non-disabled students can understand students with DD. By doing so, equal accessibility to education will be achieved. These are the references. Thank you for listening.
発表時間は以上となります。審査員の先生方、質問をお願いいたします。
Okay, I have a couple of questions. First of all, thank you very much for your presentation. That's awesome. So, in this presentation, why did you only focus on developmental disorder (DD) in short, under the framework of inclusive education?
Yes, as I said before, developmental disorders are the problems, difficulties that other people don't understand the developmental disorders well, and they tend to the misunderstanding from others. So I choose developmental disorders, and also students with developmental disorders in class. The number of students with DD is increased for 10 years. For example, in 2012, the percentage of students with DD in class is 6.5%. However, in 2022, now students with DD is 8.8%. So that means the students with DD is increased. So I focus on students with DD.
I see. But I still do not have clear ideas about the reason why you focus on the DD, because on the third slide you said you gave us the definition about accessibility. You said people with disabilities can access, which means you are talking about the disability in general.
Yes.
So I mean disability, for example, the student who have physical challenges also should be included to the education. If you say it under the flavor of the inclusive education, what do you think about that point?
Yes, accessibility is include all people with disabilities. However, students with DD have low awareness from others.
I see.
And also, other people with disabilities have problem like the facilities or other problem. And I think the most important thing that people with disabilities can live comfortable is that people's awareness is most important, because they have to live in comfortable. And I don't refer, but people with developmental disorders have more problem in terms of awareness compared with other people with disabilities.
I see. So I thought that the DD seemed to be difficult to recognize compared to the physical challenges. So that's why I thought you focus on the lack of the awareness is severe, so that you focus on this point of view in your presentation. That's my view. Thank you very much.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, Kyoka, thank you very much for your presentation. I'm very much interested in you focus on the educational system to include the all people, with even with the people have the disabilities. So could you please define more clearly about educational system?
Educational system. Now, educational system, inclusive education has been proceeding, and inclusive education means the people, non-disabled people, and people with disabilities run together. Run together, and however, the current situation is not because students with disabilities don't spend time together in class. They spend time in morning meeting or some other activities, but they don't study in most of classes. So yes, this is the inclusive educational system.
Okay. So, for example, could you please give example what kind of education system that the DD students are not able to include in a class?
Yes. For example, the math or math, Japanese, English, and main general subject, and students with DD have often difficulties to study this English or math. However, spending time together is important because they can more closer to each other, and this help their future because they also work in the place and as a member of society. So yes.
So you mean that you said this English, the subjects, mathematics. So you mean not only the subject, but also the important point of view is the methodologies.
Yes.
So if the teachers, the employee, the collaborative learning, group work, even in a mathematics, English, language class, the DD students are also able to be included in the class, you mean?
Yes.
Okay, thank you very much. So I will continue to the next question after the sensei.
Okay.
Yes.
So you gave us Ozora Elementary School as a successful practice.
Yes.
So I'm curious, how does the community play a role to include the DD student or student with disabilities?
Yes. As I said before, Ozora Elementary School has a unique subject called Horeai, and the one of the activity is open lecture. This is a lecture that given by local people, and local people give lecture. For example, the dance lesson or something. So this is supported by local people, and also students experience concert. This is held by students, but the local people is audience, and for example, when they have difficulties, the local people support, and also the school's gate is always open, so local people can go to school anytime.
Why did that practice from the community side happen in history?
Because in the first principal in Ozora Elementary School want to open to this school, and also in this school before in the past this school was closed, and local people didn't want to build the school, so local people's perspective was negative. However, the first principal changed the system and provide opportunities to interact with students and the local people. So that's why Ozora Elementary School is formed now.
Thank you.
The question is still.
Whatever.
Okay, so another question.
Yes.
So what is the differences, the more critical differences compared with the Ozora Gakko and the school in Denmark with the usual the official school in Japan?
Yes. Both the system and people's awareness is different. For example, in Denmark and Ozora Elementary School, non-disabled students think that the students with DD or students with disabilities is normal, and disability it's identity. However, in society or other usual schools, disability is still one, which the handicap, and this can recognize the negative thing. So this is the big difference.
Okay, that is really interesting. Thank you very much.
Thank you.